Hi, I'm Sarah Collins. I did my student teachings in the Roanoke County Public Schools, and I had 3 different schools that I was at. I was at 2 elementary schools and then a middle school during this 17 weeks, and they were kind of split up amongst each other, but I do visual arts, so it's like the back and forth days for elementary, so you would do 3 days at one school and then switch and do 3 days at another school, which was hard to figure out how to plan for at first, but we got the hang of it. But that kind of comes into like some of the questions on here, so I thought I would start out with that. And then starting with some of the questions for the discussion post, what part of this course was the most helpful in prepping you for EdTPA? And that for me would be the corrections assignments, because I really like knowing like the feedback for what I need to fix and being able to check those little checklists. That was really nice, being able to see the checklist. I actually printed them out and would go through and highlight the ones that I had needed to work on, and I would mark them off as I went, which worked really well. I also enjoyed the discussion post because it was kind of food for thought and it made you think more of all the things you were doing. And then, how did EdTPA help you make connections to what is required of you in the classroom? It like laid out responsibilities really clear. I'm not a fan of the EdTPA, but it made me analyze deeper into like all the material that I was putting together and showing me like what exactly I was thinking while I was putting it out, which really helped me in the long run. And I think that I'll be using some of those techniques once I actually start making lesson plans for my future classroom as well. Just making sure that I am looking at like all the deeper meanings into everything a little bit more. And then, what aspect of student teaching had the biggest impact on your life? That would be the connections with students. I wrote out some little notes for myself, and I have a pen from one of my kids that I had at the middle school that he gifted me. And then those kids at the middle school also had made me a bag and wrote their names and little notes on it and drew little things for me. And then I'm also a cheer coach, and so some of my elementary kids go to the gym that I work at, and I'll see them occasionally, and they'll be telling me what they're doing in the art room and everything. And so those connections with students have been the biggest impact on my life. I've really enjoyed that. And then, do you feel prepped to lead your own classroom? And yes, I believe that I'll do really well in my own classroom someday. I'm currently putting in applications, so hopefully that'll be soon. With some of our discussion posts, like the interview and impression tips for our resumes and all that, I found that one very helpful. I keep going back and looking at that. And then, reasons why I also feel prepped are behavior management. I had previously not struggled with that, but found it a little bit more difficult to get managed because behavior is a little rough nowadays with some students. And so I really enjoyed our behavior management discussion post, being able to look back at those presentations from the speakers. The second presentation was one of my favorites because it had some good points for making connections with students, and I did find that that helps a lot with behavior management. I had a few kids where I needed to really look into their interests and bring that into the classroom for them to stop misbehaving. And my overall experience in my student teachings and my practicums, I feel like has prepped me for being in my own classroom, and then my lessons being fun. I love finding fun lessons. Like one of my classes had done wind chimes out of clay and got to glaze them, but they had to do a nature theme to them. So I had kids making like beehives out of quail pots and then having little bees and drips of honey coming down from them, or having flower petals, like the pot at the top was flower petals and there'd be more flower petals coming out of the bottom. I personally did sunflower, so it was like little seeds coming out for my teacher example. And just stuff like that, being fun, keeping it easy on you, not being overcomplicated. I really do feel like that has prepped me for my own classroom. But yeah, thank you.